Well, hi there. So in this video, we're going to do a little bit of practice related to economic growth policy. First will be a discussion about what are different things that could affect economic growth rates, and then we'll do a practice problem that actually walks you through how economic growth could occur. Let's get started. Okay, so this first set of bullet points in class, what I usually have students do is have a quick little discussion about how do they think it would affect long-run growth, right? Are these kind of supply side things that how would they increase or decrease aggregate supply is really what I'm trying to get at here. I'll have that conversation with you since you weren't able to do this in class. If we had less labor force participation, that's less inputs, right? Less inputs, right? And following the provision of universal basic income. So maybe there's a policy here that leads to less people in the labor force. And so we would have slower growth, right? Now, that may not mean that universal basic income is a bad idea, but it means that you have to deal with trade-offs, right? This world is full of trade-offs. That's going to be one. Increasing government deficit following a reduction in personal income tax rates. You can go either way with this one, right? Maybe this, right? This slows because interest rate went up, right? Maybe this faster because more savings, and interest rate would go down. It's an open question on that one, right? Would that one actually slow economic growth rate or speed it up? A lot of times there's a lot of mixed evidence about just saying, let's reduce personal income tax rates in general, right? That's not usually going to do it. It's probably going to end up slowing more than we're actually doing anything with that. Most of the time, just cutting personal income taxes is not going to do it, right? So probably not quite there, right? Not quite there. Third one, decrease in quantity of inputs required to produce a unit of output. That's going to clearly slow growth. Increase in quantity and quality of education and job training programs. Well, that's going to increase productivity, so therefore increased growth. Pretty clearly a direct connection there. Increase in the rate of household savings. Oh, here we go. Following a tax cut on capital gains. So this is basically saying we're going to give you a tax cut if you do certain investments. And this would absolutely faster growth faster because interest rate would go down and therefore investment would go up. So this one is probably a clearer example of where a tax cut could actually create it than this one, right? I want you to kind of compare this one versus this one. Two different kind of worlds in those, in this one, right? Now let's take a look at number 2. This is more of an AP exam style problem. Assume the U.S. economy is operating at full employment. Right, draw U.S. ADAS graph. So we got Y and PL, AD, and SRAS, and we are at full employment. Whoops, didn't quite get it. LRAS, and we are at YF, and just good habits here. Whoops, PL star. Let's do that. PL star. Assume the government decreases taxes on corporate profits. What's the initial impact on aggregate demand? Explain, show in your graph. Well, if there's decreased taxes on corporate profits, there's going to be more corporate spending, right? There's going to be increased investment. And so aggregate demand would increase. So we did that. Therefore, aggregate demand increases. So it really is just as simple as lower taxes on corporations are going to lead to more investment spending. They've got more money to spend on stuff, right? Based on your answer in A, what's the effect on short-run aggregate supply? Explain and show on your graph. Well, as a result of this, right, increased capital and productivity, and that's, remember, we think about resource costs, actions by the government affecting producers, productivity. What's it's going to do? It's going to actually cause that SRAS to shift to the right. Okay, so now, therefore, SRAS increased. And now, based on your answer in B, what's the effect on the long-run aggregate supply? Explain and show in your graph. Well, because there's increased capital and productivity is permanent, we can say, therefore, LRAS increases. And that's really just saying that this capital and productivity would be a permanent change, right? You built the buildings, you got more productive. And so as a result, you actually lead to LRAS, we'll kind of say 3, because we'll say this one's 2. And so ultimately your YF will increase. And so it'll kind of catch up to it like that. Now you can see why normally we don't have you do that in an AP test, right? That's not pretty usual. What's the long run effect though of this corporate tax cut on price levels? Well, if we don't know the magnitudes of these different shifts, we actually can't tell, right? because you can't tell if AD increased versus SRAS increased, how much those did, right? Can't tell how much AD increased versus SRAS increased. So like you could see how if SRAS increased a whole lot, that new point of price would be at a lower price. If aggregate demand had increased a whole lot, then actually it would be at a higher one. Part E, assume the U.S. economy produces capital and consumer goods at right, draw a collective graph of the production possibilities curve, then show the long run effect, and that's going to be key here, of that corporate tax cut. And so it does tell us they produce capital and consumer, right? And we were here, right? And now the long run effect that they're asking us to show is growth. Ta-da! So hopefully this helped you kind of thinking about what are the long run effects of some of these growth policies. I'll see you next time.